Welcome to British Focus. Today we delve into what appears to be a tectonic shift in British politics, a move that is as bold as it is contentious. In a matter of just 6 sharp months, the northern regions are on the cusp of completing the devolution process, marking a radical reorientation of power that promises to redefine how decisions are made across our country. Imagine a landscape where, finally, decisions for the north are made by those who truly understand the local pulse, rather than by distant bureaucrats in Whitehall. This isn't merely a change in administrative procedure. It is an irreversible transformation that sends shockwaves through the corridors of Westminster and challenges decades of established political practice. The introduction of a £1 billion devolution plan by Angela Rayner is nothing short of revolutionary. In unveiling her strategy at the annual convention of the North, Rayner didn't just signal the transfer of power, she delivered a searing rebuke to years of Conservative centralisation. Here we see a government determined to shift the balance, to pull power away from the traditional stronghold of Whitehall and to place it firmly into the hands of local leaders. This approach, celebrated by many as a landmark moment, is not without its critics. Tory ministers and stalwarts of the old regime are scrambling, fearing that this move will dismantle the long-standing grip they have maintained over regional funding. Yet, isn't it time that those who are directly affected by policies had the final say? One cannot help but appreciate the dramatic rhetoric as Rayner described the English devolution programme as the biggest power shift in a generation. It is a call to arms for northerners who have long been subject to decisions imposed from afar, in a system that has repeatedly favoured a London-centric model. By asserting that the era of distant decision-making is over, Rayner not only challenges the status quo but also lays bare the inherent inequities that have plagued our political landscape. For too long, regional leaders have been forced into a perpetual cycle of pleading for financial support. A begging bowl culture that, as she pointed out, has left northern communities starved of essential resources. Now, take a moment to reflect on this. Is it not inherently undemocratic to allow a select group in the capital to dictate policies that affect the very fabric of communities far removed from that insulated centre of power? Rayner's plan, which aims to empower local authorities by giving them greater autonomy over their budgets and planning decisions, is a direct response to this enduring injustice. It is about trust and fairness, about recognizing that those who live and work in these regions are best placed to understand and address their unique challenges. The promise of transferring financial and planning authority to the north is an unequivocal rejection of a centralized bureaucracy that has, for too long, hindered progress and perpetuated regional inequalities. Yet, this is not merely a fiscal or administrative reform, it is also a battle for the soul of our nation. The reorganization of local authorities and the introduction of new mayoral powers signal an attempt to cut through the red tape that has historically strangled local development. There is an underlying urgency in these reforms, a sense that the old system has failed to deliver, that Conservative policies have, as Rayner argues, bogged down local development in endless bureaucracy while preferentially funneling money to wealthier southern constituencies. This rebalancing act, then, is not simply about reallocating resources. It is about reimagining the relationship between the government and the governed. As we engage with this narrative, it is impossible not to be critical of the resistance from within the Tory ranks. There is a palpable tension as established power brokers scramble to cling to a vestige of control in an era that demands decentralization. Their fear of losing influence underscores a deeper truth. The current system has long been more about preserving power for the few than about serving the many. The notion that Tory resistance to devolution is driven by self-interest rather than the needs of the British public is a powerful indictment of a political establishment that has lost touch with the realities of modern governance. The concept of giving northerners an army in the form of empowered local councils to tackle infrastructure blockers is particularly striking. It is a metaphor that paints a vivid picture of a grassroots movement ready to challenge and overcome the inertia that has stifled progress. The vision of a government that accelerates construction projects by streamlining planning and infrastructure approvals is not only ambitious but also refreshingly pragmatic. It directly contrasts with over a decade of government policies that, according to Rayner, have failed to deliver on their promises by entangling regional development in excessive red tape. However, as we analyze this devolution revolution, it is crucial to question what this shift means for the future of British politics. On one hand, it heralds a new era where local leaders have the power to craft solutions tailored to their communities. On the other, it raises significant questions about the balance of power and the potential challenges that might arise from such a decentralized system. Will local autonomy lead to a more responsive and dynamic form of governance? Or could it inadvertently create new layers of complexity and disparity? This is a debate that we, as engaged citizens and observers of British politics, must not shy away from. Moreover, this sweeping reform is set against a backdrop of historical grievances and a desire for regional self-determination that has simmered for decades. The promise of devolution is seen by many as a long overdue correction, a move towards a more equitable distribution of power that recognizes the distinct identities and needs of the North. Yet, as with any major transformation, there are risks and uncertainties. The dismantling of the old order will inevitably provoke resistance from those who have benefited from it, and the transition itself may be fraught with unforeseen challenges. Nonetheless, the very act of attempting such a profound change is a testament to the evolving nature of our democracy. In engaging with these developments, I invite you, our discerning audience, to reflect on the broader implications of this power shift. Consider the transformative potential of a political system that is more attuned to local realities and more accountable to the communities it serves. The devolution of power is not merely a policy adjustment. It is a fundamental rethinking of governance that prioritizes the needs of the many over the interests of the few. As we witness this historic moment, it is essential to scrutinize every facet of the reform, to celebrate its promise while remaining vigilant about its execution. Ultimately, this is a pivotal moment for our nation. The move to decentralize power represents both a challenge to the entrenched status quo and an opportunity to forge a more inclusive and dynamic political landscape. The message is clear: the days of unaccountable, distant decision-making are coming to an end, and a new era of regional empowerment is on the horizon. As you follow this journey with British focus, consider how this evolution might reshape not only the politics of the North but also the very fabric of our society. In our current political climate, the move to establish a new official definition of Islamophobia has sparked intense debate and raised important questions about how best to address anti-Muslim discrimination and hate crimes in our society. The government's proposed initiative, which includes the creation of a dedicated council on Islamophobia, is being presented as a crucial step towards creating a clearer framework for tackling the disturbing rise in hate incidents targeting Muslim communities. As we consider these developments, it is essential to examine the implications of defining such a contentious term, and to explore whether this new approach will ultimately serve to protect vulnerable communities or inadvertently stifle legitimate discourse. The proposal comes at a time when the nation is grappling with an escalating number of hate crimes, with reports indicating record levels of anti-Muslim incidents. There is no doubt that Muslim communities have long been subjected to discrimination and abuse, often with little recourse or adequate protection under existing legal frameworks. The introduction of a formal definition of Islamophobia is intended to bring much-needed clarity to these issues and to provide a basis for stronger governmental action. Yet, as we delve into the nuances of this initiative, we must critically assess whether the definition being put forward truly addresses the complexities of religious discrimination or if it risks oversimplifying a multifaceted problem. Critics of the proposed definition argue that it may be overly broad, potentially conflating legitimate criticism of Islam with hateful bigotry. Such concerns are not without merit. The challenge lies in striking a delicate balance between safeguarding free speech, a cornerstone of our democratic society, and ensuring that anti-Muslim sentiment does not slip into unchecked, harmful behavior. It is a tightrope walk that demands both careful legal consideration and an openness to diverse perspectives. For those of us who value robust debate and the free exchange of ideas, the possibility that the new definition could be used as a tool to censor dissent is a matter of serious concern. At the heart of the controversy is the role of key figures such as Dominic Grieve, who is widely seen as a leading candidate to chair the new council. Grieve's long-standing involvement in interfaith dialogue and his legal expertise in matters of religious discrimination position him as a significant influence on the future shape of this policy. His previous contributions, including his foreword to a controversial 2018 report that proposed a definition of Islamophobia later adopted by the Labour Party, underscore the deep divisions within the political sphere regarding how best to tackle this issue. Supporters of the initiative see Grieve's involvement as a sign that the government is committed to a thoughtful, informed approach, while detractors fear that his role may lend undue weight to a definition that could be manipulated to serve political ends. There is also the broader question of whether a new definition will be able to encapsulate the lived experiences of Muslim communities, or whether it will fall short of capturing the subtleties of everyday discrimination. Some observers contend that without a clear and comprehensive definition, Muslim communities will continue to face systemic prejudice without the protection they desperately need. The statistics on hate crimes, which reveal a worrying upward trend, suggest that there is an urgent need for policy reform. However, the path to achieving meaningful change is fraught with challenges. The process of consulting experts and incorporating diverse viewpoints is critical to ensuring that any new definition does not inadvertently create new barriers or open the door to potential misuse. Moreover, the debate over this definition highlights a deeper societal divide. On one side, there are those who argue that a precise and legally enforceable definition of Islamophobia is essential for holding perpetrators of hate crimes accountable. On the other, there are voices warning that such a definition, if not carefully calibrated, could encroach upon the fundamental right to free expression. This dichotomy reflects a broader tension within our society, the struggle to reconcile the need for security and social cohesion with the equally vital principles of individual liberty and free speech. As we reflect on these issues, it is clear that any attempt to define Islamophobia must be undertaken with the utmost caution and a deep sensitivity to the diverse experiences of those affected by both discrimination and criticism. The government's insistence that the proposed definition will remain compatible with the unchanging right of British citizens to exercise freedom of speech is a point of reassurance for many. However, the practical realities of enforcing such a definition remain to be seen. There is a risk that, in its implementation, the new framework could be perceived as a form of de facto censorship, a tool to silence voices that challenge prevailing narratives. This concern is compounded by the fact that even well-integrated, law-abiding Muslims are not immune to the effects of discrimination, suggesting that the problem is not one of mere semantics but of deeply entrenched societal attitudes. It is also worth considering the broader political context in which this initiative is taking shape. The discussion surrounding the definition of Islamophobia is not occurring in isolation. It is part of a larger conversation about how best to support affected communities and ensure that discrimination is effectively tackled at every level of society. The government's commitment to combating all forms of hatred and division is commendable, yet the complexities of translating policy into practice should not be underestimated. As the Council's work progresses and further updates are promised, it will be crucial for policymakers to remain transparent and receptive to feedback from both Muslim communities and the wider public. In engaging with this multifaceted issue, I invite you to reflect on the inherent tensions between security and liberty, between the need for decisive governmental action and the preservation of open debate. The challenge is not simply to craft a definition that is legally sound, but to do so in a manner that recognizes and respects the diversity of thought and experience that characterizes our society. While the intention behind the initiative is undoubtedly noble, its success will ultimately depend on the willingness of all stakeholders to engage in honest, critical dialogue, one that does not shy away from difficult questions or compromise on fundamental democratic values. As we navigate this challenging terrain, let us remain vigilant and open-minded. It is only through rigorous debate and thoughtful consideration that we can hope to create a framework that not only addresses the urgent need to protect Muslim communities but also upholds the cherished principles of free speech and individual liberty. In closing, I encourage you to continue this conversation, to scrutinize every aspect of the proposed definition, and to hold our leaders to the highest standards of accountability and transparency. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of one of the most pressing issues of our time.